but we need to rally behind each other when this happens. But I want to acknowledge, I was asked to acknowledge this person who's amazing. She just passed away this month. And she was an amazing actress. She was on Thanks Vegan and at many events. An amazing person. She was actually a professional entertainer, singer, and pianist. And because of her plant-based diet, I think she lived as long as she did because she was diagnosed with cancer in 2008. And she's lived with that just recently. So I think it's because of the lifestyle. But you never met a more kind person who loved people. And when she walked into the room, you knew she was there. She made you feel so special like her own home. So her husband is here, Thomas, and I just want you to know that we love you and we love Courtney. His wife was known as Courtney West, but her real name was Doris Jones Sickler. But her professional and stage name was Courtney. And if you saw her one time, you would never forget her because she just made everybody feel special. So I just want you to get a chance to tell Thomas how sorry we are for his loss. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And, very well. So Patrick and the chef, I hope you can come up, but if not, we want to thank them. Isn't the food amazing? Yeah. We're so happy that we were able to fill the room, and we have more people come, and somehow some people didn't show, but it worked out perfectly. So if you're here, you were meant to be here, and I know some of you came to hear our speaker. So I don't want to delay introducing her, but how many of you already know Jacinda? Quite a few people. Did you know that she was a diabetes educator and a registered nurse? Okay. So, well, she's an amazing speaker also. And not this past year, the past year, she actually was elected as our Activist of the Year because Jacinda does a lot. She wears a lot of hats. She's a mom who helps students who need help, even though they're not her own kids. And she's out there helping anybody who needs to be helped and willing to share her knowledge. She speaks out as an activist for the animals, the environment, and for health. And our health is important, so we need to be role models. So I'm just so grateful that Jacinda took the time to be here. And you know from the flyer, I already told you she's a registered nurse. She's actually a diplomate of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and that's big stuff. You can be a doctor, you can be a diabetes educator, you can be all kinds of things, but that's an extra credential that you have to really work hard for to prove that you know your stuff. Well, she knows her stuff, and she definitely knows about diabetes. And so, without further ado, I want to reintroduce you to Jacinda Shapiro.
First, I'm going to try something. Can you guys hear me, or do I need the microphone? Microphone. Okay. I was hoping that maybe everyone could hear me without the microphone. So I do know a lot of people here. This is a great turnout. I'm so excited to be here today. But with a show of hands, because there are people I don't know, I would like to know if anyone is here who is curious about being vegan or plant-based and you're not, you're an omnivore. If any of you here are like that, I'd like you to raise your hand. Okay, you're welcome. Welcome. Yes, I wish that we could bring in more of our community that is not part of our tribe yet, because for us to be able to grow it. But hopefully I can provide you some education today. Sorry for your loss. Yeah. Do you need a chair? Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so again, my name is Jacinda. I am a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and again, a diplomat of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I work with people with all forms of diabetes. I also work with children. But I also work with anyone that is living with a health condition that is driven by the food that they eat. which is not limited to diabetes, heart disease, cancer, polycystic ovarian syndrome, issues conceiving. Is there a way to turn it up, the volume? Oh, am I stuck to that because I have to do slides? How about now? How about now? Can you guys hear me better? Okay. If at any point you can't hear me, please raise your hand. And can we remove this because that's in front of the slides so people can see it? So unlike members who gave commentary for our new dietary guidelines for Americans, I have no financial disclosures.
Yes.
So, again, I am a diplomat of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. This is a medical society that sees lifestyle as the primary, most important thing that we can do for our health. It is rooted in a plant-based diet, but we also have prescriptions for the importance of exercise, social connections, stress reduction, avoiding alcohol and tobacco, and the importance of sleep. There are over 589 million people living with diabetes globally. That number is projected to rise to over 850 million by 2050. This is a burden throughout the world. It is a true epidemic, but yet it's mostly preventable. And for those who develop type 2 diabetes, it shouldn't progress because it is a food-borne disease. So today we're going to talk about how protein actually contributes to diabetes and how you can prevent it, and if you're living with type 2 diabetes, how you can reverse it. First, a little stats. 55% of the adult population in the United States is living with a form of diabetes. And don't be fooled thinking that pre-diabetes is a non-issue. If someone is living with pre-diabetes, they are at significant risk of developing dementia later in life. They are actively destroying their beta cells that make insulin. In fact, you can lose 40% of your beta cell function while you're living with pre-diabetes. 40% of adults are living with pre-diabetes, but the scary thing is 80% of people who have it don't know it. 1 out of every 4 people has fatty liver disease, and I think that number is on the low end. You have to have fatty liver disease to have type 2 diabetes. 1 out of every 10 kids is living with fatty liver disease. By the age of 60, 60% of the adult population has high blood pressure. That is a risk factor for determining all-cause mortality. 75% of the adult population is overweight, with over 42% obese. If you are living with diabetes, 2 out of every 3 people will die from heart disease. Most of it is heart failure. And 1 out of every 3 people living with diabetes has chronic kidney disease. Now, most people don't die from chronic kidney disease. They actually die from heart disease. But most people don't know they have chronic kidney disease until they need dialysis. Oh, and something else that was really important on that slide is the #1 nutritional deficiency in the United States and throughout the world is the lack of dietary fiber. So I meet people all the time that tell me that they've reversed their diabetes. I meet other doctors all the time that are like, in my practice, I help people to reverse diabetes too. And they all do it by avoiding carbohydrates. This is not diabetes reversal. So diabetes reversal happens when your A1C is under 6.5, but for me, I want people to have an A1C A1C under 5.7. You're not taking medications, you're not on a pump, and you eat large amounts of carbohydrates, like 100 grams, 150 grams of carbohydrates, and you have a normal sugar and insulin response. It is not when you avoid eating carbohydrates. So it's important to understand what happens in the body when you're healthy. Sugar is your primary fuel. It is so important your liver is always making it. If you're a healthy person, your liver is making maybe 1 or 2 grams of sugar an hour. If you're living with type 2 diabetes, you're making 5 to 6 grams of sugar an hour. And at night, your brain needs a lot of sugar. So you're making between 10 and 15 grams of sugar, depending on if you're healthy or living with type 2 diabetes. So under normal circumstances, you eat food, and almost all food has protein in it. Some food has some carbohydrates in it. Everything has fat in it. Your body breaks it down, and insulin, which is produced in the pancreas, helps to open the door in the tissue so the sugar can get inside the cells, inside the muscle, inside the liver. When you are not healthy, insulin can't open the door. And this happens because of excess dietary fat. How many people in here think diabetes is caused from eating too much sugar? So that's often a misconception. Sugar does not cause type 2 diabetes. Sugar is your primary fuel. Excess dietary fat first gets into the liver. That's why fatty liver is a precursor to type 2 diabetes. Then it gets into the muscle. It gets into the pancreas. It gets into the beta cells and prevents the beta cells from actually making insulin. When this happens, insulin can no longer do its job. It can't open up the door so sugar can get in. Then your liver starts making even more sugar because you're not getting your primary fuel into your tissue. And the next thing you know, now you're making lots of insulin. Now, insulin is a very important hormone. Without it, you would die. But you're only to make a little bit of this hormone. And when you make a lot of it, it leads to poor health outcomes, and it can also cause you to gain weight. So, diabetes is not about too much sugar. It is about fat storing in the wrong places and creating a metabolic burden inside of the body. And most of the food we consume is refined or ultra-processed food. This includes vegans. Very little of our food, it comes from whole plant foods. It's typically about less than 6%. And it is less than 3% of the adult population that consumes enough fiber to be healthy. So the solution is to remove the food that creates this metabolic burden. The main driver is dietary fat, but also animal protein, refined carbohydrates, and ultra-processed food, and alcohol. So the one thing also, how many of you in here are animal advocates like myself? So this is what I like to tell my fellow advocates who are always fighting for the rights of our sentient beings, is eat like you mean it. Because if you eat high-fat vegan food and ultra-processed food, and you end up with heart disease, diabetes, and you take medication to treat this foodborne disease that kills millions of animals, how vegan for the animals are you? We should be eating whole food, intact plants, reducing our consumption of ultra-processed foods and excess dietary fat. So how many of you are familiar that Secretary Kennedy published new dietary guidelines for Americans on the 7th of January? Yeah, right on. Yeah, and they did say, hey, more fruits and vegetables, right? But Chris Gardner, who sat on the committee for the guidelines, who is a very well-known nutritional scientist, all of the recommendations from the people who sat on the advisory committee, Kennedy either ignored or he just altered some of the things that they're recommending. then he proposed another panel, all composed of high-end protein advocates, low carb, all funded by either the dairy or meat industry to provide him recommendations. Now, the original committee, now I have to say we've always had conflicts. There has always been conflicts. And so Kennedy first said he wanted to reduce conflicts. Sounds good, but he actually made it worse because now everybody on that ethics committee has ties to animal ag. And because of that, they did not look at the totality of the scientific evidence. They had an opinion and they found supporting evidence for it. And that is not how science works. So also there's all these conflicts in the recommendations and what the pyramid shows. If you see at the bottom, it shows whole intact grains. Now even their own recommendations say 2 to 4 servings. 4 servings is like at the most of the recommendations. So you would think that those grains would be at the top of the pyramid. And not eating intact grains is an independent risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes. Now it is not white rice, but it is brown rice and barley and quinoa and millet and farro. All of these grains are extremely important to consume for your gut and to prevent chronic disease. Now another thing is they want us to consume more animal protein, increasing saturated fat limits to 10%. Now the American Heart Association says that you should never consume more than 5 to 6% of your calories from saturated fat. So this is just going to create more disease. But the truth is, we never follow guidelines. What this is going to do is confuse more people about what food promotes health and what food promotes disease. And I am going to have people that are going to come to me and go, well, you know, I don't really think it's all the fat anymore, you know, because of the guidelines. So today we're going to talk about the myths around protein. That animals are the best source of protein, that plants are missing protein, and you have to combine protein, and what it takes to build muscle. So Kennedy also said that we were demonizing protein. Well, I've never seen it. This is a battle I am always fighting. And I've done many presentations on protein because we are protein obsessed. And it's pushed down our throats with every commercial, every magazine is telling us we need to eat more and more protein. In fact, now you can purchase water that has protein. And we are being brainwashed into thinking that we need more protein. And protein deficiencies are a real thing. It is starvation. It is called kwashiorkor, and it happens in third world countries. Not getting enough protein can happen if you don't eat enough calories, but true protein deficiencies are extremely rare. Nothing changed with the cereal except for the labeling. Every time I speak to healthcare providers, medical students, diabetes educators, they are always telling me that they're concerned that they don't get enough protein. And these are the providers that are supposed to help all of us live a healthier, longer life that don't seem to understand the role around protein. So how much protein do you really need? How many people in here are concerned about their protein intake? Now that's almost amazing because even when I speak to other plant-based people, we get convinced that we're just still not eating enough protein. Because we also have plant-based doctors that have been promoting more protein as well. So before the guidelines came out January 7th, this was the recommendation. And 0.8 grams per kilogram is the most that a healthy individual needs. And we're going to get to how the study was done in another slide. But now, thanks to Kennedy, they say 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram. And of course, they want this to come from animal protein as well. So original nitrogen studies were done. And what they found is that healthy people need between 0.38 and 0.8 grams per kilogram to be healthy. Now, if you're an athlete, by default, you will get more protein when you eat more. So if you're Dotsie Bouch, an Olympic cyclist, and you're eating 5,000 calories a day, you will be getting a lot more protein because you're consuming more calories. But healthy people don't need more protein unless they're some sort of professional athlete. And then Chris Gardner said that the new recommendations on saturated fat and protein, that you're going to exceed your saturated fat limitations of 10% and exceed sodium limitations. So, fun question here. These are 4 kingdoms. So we have animals, plants, fungi, and bacteria. Which one of the 4 kingdoms cannot make the 9 essential amino acids? And yet, there are so many people and bodybuilders who are just looking to get their protein from animals that cannot make essential amino acids. So when it comes to plants, they are the original protein. There isn't a plant on the planet that doesn't have all 20 amino acids. That means they have all 9 essential amino acids. But compared to animal protein, the percentage of each of those amino acids is just different. And it's different in a way that actually benefits our health. When it comes to legumes, they have a little less cysteine and methionine. These are sulfur-containing amino acids. And when you consume a lot of them, they cause insulin resistance. And that drives our #1 killer: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, liver failure. Grains will contain a little less lysine, but large amounts of lysine can cause kidney disease. You can absorb, especially if you're taking supplements, you can start absorbing too much calcium. It can become really problematic. Plants have the right balance of the amino acids we need. And because all plants contain all 20 amino acids, you don't need to combine plants for a complete protein. And if you only ate wheat bread, slices of wheat bread, that you consumed enough calories for your body that you need, you will get double the amount of protein that your body requires. But I don't know anybody who just eats one food. Most of us have a balance of some sort of foods in our diet. So just like cows, we don't need to be worried about protein deficiencies, and neither do our friends or family members as well. Now, ironically, we consume more protein than almost any country in the world except for China. So you would think that if eating protein builds muscle, all of us would be ripped and need to compete in bodybuilding events. But instead, for industrialized countries, no one is fatter than we are. We eat more protein than just about anybody, and we're one of the fattest countries in the world. So the amount of protein we consume, the amount of cows and chickens people are consuming has gone up drastically. The average person consumes over 222 pounds. That is like a person eating an average sized man and a 5 to 6-year-old child every year. So as I said earlier, 75% of the adult population is overweight or obese. If we're looking at calorie density, these are 5 stomachs. They all have 500 calories in them. Plants fill up the stomach. You get full sooner. They're all 500 calories. But when we eat meat, it is calorie dense. It is full of fat. And it also doesn't hit those stretch receptors. And I'm not going to be talking about the GLP-1s today, but that's what the body, hormones the body naturally makes. And so it is easy to overeat. And also, fun fact, the more fat you eat, your gut microbes will begin to absorb more calories from your food. In times when we foraged for food, this was really important because we were thin and we needed to gain weight. This is not the case today. So now it's important to understand our fuels for our body. So as I was saying earlier, glucose is your primary fuel. You cannot make red blood cells without it, your brain can't function without it, and you have limited storage for this. The storage is in glycogen storage in your muscle, in your liver, and all the other tissue, including even inside your brain. But you store about 2 days' worth of this primary fuel, and your liver is always filling up those fuels. Fat. Our beloved late Dr. McDougall said the fat you eat is the fat you wear. You have unlimited storage for fat. So however much you consume, you are going to store. A small McDonald's fry has about 11 grams of fat. It takes 40 minutes of continuous exercise, no break. So if you were doing burpees, you would need to do between 200 and 800 burpees to be able to burn the fat in one small McDonald's fry. And you will store everything you're not burning. So then we come to protein. How many people in this room think protein is a fuel for the body? This is good, because most people do. Protein is not a fuel, it is for structure. We have no storage for protein. So a moment ago, I showed you how we consume more protein than any other industrialized country except for China, but we are the fattest industrialized country. So what happens when we eat protein, you can only utilize about 25 grams of protein in a meal. And I meet the people who are like, God, I gotta get 80 grams of protein. So in that meal, your body is going to break that protein down and put the amino acids together in what it needs at that time. It doesn't take the protein you're actually consuming, it reconfigures it for what it needs. When it's done utilizing that protein, it has to excrete it. Plant protein is very easy for the kidneys to excrete. If it's animal protein, it is very difficult on the kidneys, and that's why animal protein drives chronic kidney disease. What you can't excrete, what do you do with it? Got to store it. How much storage do you have for sugar? Very limited. Only about 2 days worth. But you have unlimited storage for fat. So you store it as fat. So the more protein we eat, just the fatter we get. And now we have all these GLP-1s, and we've got doctors saying, oh, you're going to have all this muscle loss, so eat more protein. Well, we don't eat protein and grow muscles, or we would all be eating brain and have really big brains. It just doesn't work like that. You need resistance training. So now on the environmental front, there is nothing that causes more destruction to our planet than animal agriculture. It produces more emissions than all modes of transportation put together. 80% of our farmland is used for livestock, and yet it only produces 18% of our calories and about 37% of our protein. It is the most inefficient way to provide food for humans. And when it comes to water, most water is used for animal ag. And the water they don't use, they contaminate. It takes 1,800 gallons of water to bring 1 pound of meat to the table. The same amount of soybeans and beans only takes a couple of gallons. There is no bigger driver of habitat loss than animal agriculture. Nothing. Since 1970, we have lost 70% of our wildlife. Only 4 to 6% of animals are wild. Most of the animals on this planet are animals in our food system. It's also important to note that some people just don't know this, but including fish and land animals, we kill 8 billion animals every 24 hours. Our number one nutritional deficit is fiber, not found in animal foods. Our ancestors consumed well over 100 grams of it a day. There's some estimates it was probably well over 130, but understand that wild plants have fiber, but the typical adult today, and this includes my vegan friends who are eating just vegan crap stuff out of a box, that we're only getting about 15 grams of fiber a day. So I'm always telling people that they should consume 50 grams of fiber a day or more, and if you're not actually plant-based. You're not truly plant-based if you're not at least getting 50 grams of fiber a day or more. Hippocrates, over 2,500 years ago, said all disease begins in the gut. And he was right. But that also means that all health begins in the gut as well. So it's relatively a newer discovery to learn that we are mostly microbes. They outnumber us 10 to 1. It's composed of bacteria and virus and fungi and archaea, which is a single-cell organism, but we are mostly bacteria. And in our guts, 70% of that bacteria resides there. That bacteria, the healthy bacteria, are fiber-loving microbes. Got a phone going?
That was excellent.
That's your microbes. So our healthy microbes are fiber-loving microbes. And remember, I said that we're averaging about 50 grams of fiber a day instead of what we should be feeding them. So we are losing diversity of our gut microbes. And when we kill some of them, they're just gone. So the solution to a healthy body is increasing our intake of fiber from a variety of different plant foods. And when we do, they feed microbes in our gut that make a short-chain fatty acid, and many of them have different roles. Some of them up and down regulate gene expression. Some of them regulate blood sugars by 4 different pathways. They regulate our blood pressure. They regulate our lipids. They make almost all of our neurotransmitters, including happy hormones that get taken up by the vagus nerve. Our mental health is directly related to our forks as well. Fun fact is that we can recycle protein, and it's recycled by fiber-loving microbes in the gut. So when we are more plant-based, we actually grow more of those microbes, and that's why vegans can have higher protein levels than meat eaters. So then for people who are sort of trying to be vegan, they're more vegetarian, or they allow certain foods to come in and they think they're okay. Eggs are probably one of the worst foods anyone can consume related to insulin resistance. They are mostly fat. They directly impact someone's insulin needs if they're living with insulin-dependent diabetes. They spike postprandial blood sugars, and they increase daily needs for insulin. But 1 egg a day can increase your risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 60%. And if you're a man, it increases your risk of prostate cancer. It's important to note that any study done on eggs that shows positive impact of consuming eggs are all funded by the egg industry. There is no safe amount of eggs to consume. And dairy is typically the leading source of dietary saturated fat. India has some of the highest rates of increasing new type 2 diabetes. They also consume some of the highest amounts of dairy. And a lot of people think that they're mostly vegetarian there. They're not. Most people are omnivores, but they still consume a tremendous amount of dairy. Dairy causes insulin resistance. It also makes the liver produce IGF-1, which makes cancer start and metastasize. And contrary to popular belief, it does not build strong bones. Our blood is a little alkaline, and when we consume dairy, it makes our blood a little acidic, and we can pull calcium from our bones to neutralize those acids. Some people think, oh, we need to get our omegas, maybe fish is good for us. Well, first, fish are sentient beings. They do feel pain. So when you pull a fish out of the water and take a picture with it, It is the same as holding a puppy underwater and asking somebody to take your picture. Our ocean provides 70% of the oxygen we breathe, and we are raping our ocean. It is expected to be dead by 2048. On top of it, we should be getting our ALA that does all the conversions down to DHA from our leafy greens, not fish. Fish is just the middleman. Fish is very high in cholesterol and also fat. It contains no fiber, but it also contains a lot of microplastics besides heavy metals, medications. When you consume fish, you're consuming maybe someone's heart meds or chemotherapy or maybe illegal drugs like heroin, because our poop all makes it to the water and all makes it to the ocean. And fish have a lot of fat and they absorb all the contaminants from the ocean. But now the newest studies show that if you have heart plaques or carotid plaques and they contain microplastics or nanoplastics, you are significantly more likely to die if you have a heart attack. And that is why the past president of the American College of Cardiology, Dr. Kim Williams, is anyone here familiar with Dr. Kim Williams? He says there is no safe amount of fish to consume. He says nothing from the ocean should be consumed. Nothing. Because of the microplastics, nanoplastics, and all food that's coming from the ocean. All animal protein causes all chronic disease that we see today. It increases your risk. So you have to ask yourself, why does the American Diabetes Association or the American Heart Association just tell you to eat less of the animal protein? You know, eat more, but just eat a little less. That would be like telling your friend who's an alcoholic, you don't really need to stop alcohol, just drink less of it. So Harvard researchers looked at the lives of 216,000 people, followed them up to 36 years, and were able to conclude that animal protein is an independent risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes. Every single serving of red meat someone consumes increases their risk by 24%. Every single serving of processed meat, which is also a group 1 carcinogen, increases one's risk by 46%. But what I love about this study is they showed us how we can reduce risk. So if we swap red meat for a serving of beans, you decrease someone's risk by 30%. And if you take beans and swap it for processed meat, you can decrease someone's risk by 41%. Now, I presented this paper at a diabetes conference with nothing but diabetes educators. And why they don't want to take this information and teach it to their patients is beyond me. It drives me absolutely nuts. But the truth is they don't want to eat plant-based. If they don't eat plant-based, they're not going to be teaching their patients about it. And this should be a call to action for all healthcare providers. So then it comes into supplements. I am pretty anti-supplement, with a few exceptions, or if somebody needs something. We need to be taking vitamin D. Now, if you are outside all the time and you never shower, and you don't use sunscreen, we probably don't need vitamin D. It takes your skin about 48 hours to synthesize it, so I don't know if you're like me, I run, and the first thing I do is I take a shower. So most of us need vitamin D, and we actually need higher levels than most people will tell you. Vitamin D is essential for insulin to work. It's extremely important for your immune function. And when we did forage and run naked in the forest, we had levels well over 100. So I try to get people's levels north of 70. And of course, B12, which is made by a bacteria. But when it comes to other supplements and protein powders, you have to ask yourself, if you're in this room and you consume a protein powder, why are you consuming protein powders? All plants have all protein you need. If you need a high protein drink, because you're just not getting enough protein in for the day, then add white beans, tofu into that smoothie. Supplements, most of them are actually owned by Big Pharma. They are not regulated. Supplements on average, 50% of them contain contaminants that exceed safety limits, and consumer reports found that protein powders 2/3 actually contain lead that exceed safety limits. So we don't need to be searching for protein. It's everywhere. Just eat enough with the right food. And when it comes to supplements, to date, I have never worked with anyone who has been healthy because they're taking all these supplements. I have worked with people who've been really sick, and I did have one patient whose husband died. They were seeing a functional medicine doctor. When she came to me, she was on 56 different supplements, and her husband died from toxicity of supplements, and yet she was still taking them. So it's a very reductionistic way of thinking about health. When you eat an apple, it contains protein, along with carbohydrates and fats and vitamins and minerals, and 10,000 phytonutrients that all work together to give you health. When you take vitamin C, what's it working with? You know, and it's a supplement. It's at levels that you would normally never get from eating real food, but it can give you kidney stones. So we need to get away from taking supplements. If we needed supplements for protein, so would cows. So what's important is how your protein is packaged. So every time you eat, ask yourself, does my protein have a lot of fiber? Does it have a lot of fat? Does it have a lot of vitamins and minerals? Or is it full of saturated fat, cholesterol, and containing no fiber and full of calories? So where our protein comes from matters most. So if you are living with pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes or know somebody, these are the strategies to reverse it. Now this applies for everything. Heart disease, fertility issues, gout, high blood pressure. You want to focus on a whole food, plant-based diet that's very high in fiber, exceeding 50 grams of fiber a day or more, and keeping your fat low. This is especially important if you've already expressed disease. I know people who are really healthy, they've never had health issues, that actually can consume more fat than this. But this is not most of us. Most of us are living with some sort of health condition. And after you've already expressed type 2 diabetes, the smallest amount of excessive fat will drive the disease. And this includes coming from healthy sources. First, oil is not food. It is just high-calorie fat. But nuts. You follow Dr. McGregor, and he'll be telling you how to eat all these walnuts a day. Well, 2 days ago, I had a patient come back to me. She lives with type 1. Her A1C was down to 6.2. She watched all these videos from Gregor, decided to add all these nuts back into her diet. She's fully plant-based. Her A1C is now 8.5. We eat too much fat, we store it, it drives insulin resistance, and for her, it's just made her a train wreck with her insulin. We need to exclude anything that Hattie faced or any mother. Again, removing as vegans processed food from our diet. Alcohol will contribute to it as well. And very important, movement. We have all the time in the world not to move when we die. We are meant to move. Move. Get a dog, do something that will make you get out of your house to move. And if you exercise every day for an hour and you eat 100% plant-based diet but you don't sleep at night, I can guarantee you will not have normal blood sugars. We are better with plants. Plants are amazing to build muscle. I have to say, when I was having my children, my body fat was like in the 30s. I'm the same way. I was not heavy then. The same exact weight as when I had all 3 of my kids. Today, my body fat's 10%. It's just what I changed what was on my fork. I can lift heavier today, outside of an elbow problem, but I can lift heavier today than I could when I was in my 20s. Plants are not missing protein. And also, it is best for our planet and for the sentient beings that we share this planet with. If you look at the history of chronic disease and infectious disease, it's all associated with confining animals. You know, we didn't have, Graver did a great video like 15 years ago about infectious disease. Humans never had infectious disease until we confined animals. So I think when we foraged like any other animal, never confined an animal, and you know, even though we were eating meat at that time, some people will tell you we weren't, but yes, depending on where regions were, but yes. But when we started confining animals, we never had a common cold. We got a common cold from a horse. They were never close enough to sneeze on us. We got pertussis from pigs and smallpox from camels. So I think our world has been speaking to us for a very long time, and now she's screaming at us, saying there are consequences when you harm others for no reason to. And of course, animal agriculture, the amount of lives that we are killing and causing unbearable suffering is just unacceptable. And the only way to save our planet is also by saving our own health through our forests. Anyone seen The Game Changer? Okay, this is always a great one to recommend to people, especially athletes. There is a great section with the urologist on men's health. Unfortunately, they should really focus on women's sexual health as well. It's just not spoken about as much. But the urologist on this show says you should be watching if you have a penis or love somebody who has a penis, so eventually all of us. And I like to have people keep it simple. Eating healthy should not be complicated. We shouldn't be overthinking it. And so this, I just had trademarked because I had someone I worked with who wanted to take it from me, so I had to, as quick as I could, have it trademarked, so it's just mine. But we want to keep it simple. Fiber up and back down. So questions?
All right.
So what happens, can you guys hear me? So what happens with most people.
Repeat the question.
Oh yeah, okay, so she's asking that as we get older, she hears we need more protein. Well, the truth is, as we get older, we tend to eat less. And there's problem number one, we're just not socially, sometimes we're isolated, especially women as they get older, and so we're not eating as much. If you eat enough, you're going to get all the protein that you need. Now, I work with a lot of people for diabetes reversal, and so many people have been on yo-yo diets, and they'll continue to undereat as well, which becomes problematic, especially as we're older. But we do need optimal nutrition. And so as long as you're eating enough, and I do like Dr. Grager's daily dozen. Outside of the nuts, I keep people off the nuts because it's a huge problem for people who I work with. But we should all be aiming for 3 servings or more a day of legumes and intact grains, and eating starchy and non-starchy vegetables. And unfortunately, it actually comes from just not eating enough food.
Yeah. So you referenced the other diabetes educators and the influencers that they communicate. But you referenced that your knowledge and what you know of the other diabetes educators are not following the path or waking up with what you're sharing. How heavily present or prevalent is Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly, those manufacturers on those other people in that environment that are not impressed with what you're talking about?
So Graham is asking about the influence of big pharma impacting certified diabetes care and education specialists like myself. So I spoke 2 years ago in New Orleans, and then I asked Dr. Clapper and Dr. Burns to speak last year. And when Dr. Burns got out, out of the airport and into the cab, the first thing you can see is all of the advertisements from pharmaceutical companies, including Wegovy. Was right there, and on his receipt in his Uber was stamped from Big Pharma. And it is overwhelming. You walk in, they're everywhere. They sponsor, first of all, they drink alcohol like no tomorrow at the diabetes conference. They are eating meat like no tomorrow. They are serving processed meats at these events as well. And it is all funded by Big Pharma. It's huge. My late husband was an orthopedic surgeon, and what I do know is that he had almost no education in nutrition, and what they're taught in medical school is a disease and a drug or a procedure to address it. It's huge, and so something else happened. I'm on these little member blogs within the Diabetes Association, and I decided to actually put a post about Dr. Burns' experience and how he felt that we really needed to separate ourselves from Big Pharma. My post was taken down. I was told I was in violation. And I was so angry, I refused to go to the medical conference, which created a fight between me and other diabetes educators. They think I'm like crazy vegan lady. And I can't tell you how many diabetes educators are actually living with diabetes. And I'm sorry, you probably shouldn't be a diabetes educator anymore if you don't know how to prevent it yourself. It's not like they're living with type 1. Actually, no, type 1 diabetes educator. No, type 1's different. That's different. That's different. No, but if you're living with type 2 diabetes, and you're living with insulin resistance, so then you have no idea what you're doing. Yeah.
Yes, what people think about Ozempic, at least 10 people I know here taking Ozempic. My daughter was taking Ozempic, and she became, not Ozempic, the other one you mentioned, and suddenly she started to be treated with breasts, and she was crying, like we were talking, and she cried, so she stopped doing that. Even like she this movies, that when she chose that road against my desire, like watching.
So she's asking a question about all the weight loss drugs, the Ozempic types of drugs, the GLP-1s. I am completely against them, even though I do work very closely with doctors who do prescribe them for different reasons. But it comes down, obesity and diabetes is a foodborne disease. We have had, I don't remember the amount, but I had the number for a presentation one time, so I'm just going to say a random number here. But we had something like 40 safe weight loss drugs that have been pulled from the market after later killing people. So this drug, I guarantee, will make our obesity crisis worse. So the one thing when I'm working with people to reverse diabetes is that I have them do body scans because I need to know the muscle mass compared to body fat. I've had people lose lots of weight and get down to really low BMIs and can't reverse diabetes. And when we do a body scan, I had one lady, she had a BMI of 21, but her body fat was 56%. So we lose all this muscle mass, and we lose them on the GLP-1s as well. That destroys your metabolic health.
What happened after 1 year?
Well, you lose massive amounts of muscle. And what happens when you stop taking it, you gain all the weight back, you gain no muscle back, and you end up worse than where you started. I had 2 patients with pancreatitis. So pancreatitis is actually hidden and covered up. Just as they cover up on all pharmaceutical industries, statins, Lipitor was the first statin to hit the market in 1997. Pfizer knew it caused type 2 diabetes, manipulated the data and hid it. It took 17 years to sue them over it. It's one of their largest lawsuits. So all you're doing is shifting on the plate something else that's going to kill you. And when you end up with pancreatitis, it increases your risk for pancreatic cancer. And that's almost a death sentence for those people. It does have a black box warning for thyroid cancer. Now, most people don't die from thyroid cancer, but who would raise your hand if you want thyroid cancer? You know what I mean? No one wants that. And it causes bowel obstructions, and at the large doses, even when they come off, people are still getting bowel obstructions. And why does it cause bowel obstructions? It makes your body think you're constantly eating. See, when you're eating fiber-rich food, Your body makes these hormones naturally and slows down gastric emptying. And the second the food's out of your body, everything goes back to normal. But the drugs make you think you're eating 24/7. And it just leads from one complication after another. And there's even some reported cases of blindness. And we just shift on our plate something else that's going to hurt us. But most people we do that cartoon Wall-E where everyone became so obese and then robots are just pushing people along on conveyor belts. That's like going to be us if we don't start moving and taking responsibility for our own health, which begins in our home, not with our doctor's office, except for some doctors.
There is a huge class action suit right now. I happen to know one of the plaintiffs for Jacinda. This person is named for life, and the Florida class action suit are named for life. They're going to have to come up with a way for them to eat without their intestines working or everything.
And this will take a long time before the drugs will ever be cool for the market. I mean, it could take a decade or so. I mean, it's just, it'll devastate our gut health, and it's already devastated for most people now. It's going to make things worse. It's not going to make things better. And there is a point, I talk to people all the time about prevention. There is a point, we get sick enough patients that, yes, you can decrease your risk of having a complication from diabetes, but there comes a point where you just can't reverse disease or prevent some of the complications that follow from a very poor lifestyle early on, and these drugs only contribute to that problem.
How fast does the body move your A1C like mid-6 range down below 5?
So it all depends on the person. So if you have a large amount of muscle mass, very low body fat, it's rapid. It also depends on how many yo-yo diets someone has been on. We change our resting metabolism by starving ourselves as well. So dietary fat not only causes insulin resistance, but so does under-eating calories. And so people will go from eating all the wrong food to then eating no food. And so it depends on the person. So I've had people with A1Cs above 10 completely change their life in just a few months. I've seen sugars normalize in 5 to 7 days when people jump 100% on board. But most of the time, I get people who are still following other people, and they do a little bit, and they're hoping for a lot of change. And the sicker you are, the more you need to do. So with this aspect of just a little change here and just a little change there, no one sees a big enough difference, so they give up and say it doesn't work.
You mentioned about supplements earlier, and you said that you should take.
Vitamin, so what supplement should we take? Vitamin D and B12. But we shouldn't do it blindly. We should have our levels checked. I know people who take so much B12, their numbers are really high. I don't like to see that. I like vitamin D levels at between 70 and 90. I like B12 levels between like 600 and 1100. But those are two we need.
On the vitamin D, I got the impression that
Yes, I recommend D3. Yeah, K2. Yeah, but here's the thing about K2. If I could, if I'm working with someone who's fully plant-based, they don't need it. Because one leaf of kale gives you all the K1, and your gut microbes convert K1 to K2. The issue is no one needs any drinks. Right. So we need K2. So, but if I can get people healthy, and I can actually find a vitamin D3 that I like that is vegan, that doesn't have K2 in it.
When you think about this kind of balance where, like, let's say you eat 2,200 calories a day, and then you're like, let me get 1,800 from legumes, vegetables, fruits, and then another 400 from, like, I don't know, vegan, coconut milk ice cream. What do you think about, like, an 80-20 balance?
Well, if I hit my big toe with a hammer and he consumes coconut milk, and I'm always telling him not to consume coconut milk. It is a mutated gene that allows us to excrete more fat than other people, but coconut is almost all saturated fat. I tell everybody, don't consume coconut milk. Every person is different. So I think it's important to know your numbers and know who your health is. Our blood pressure goes up as we age, but that's not what's supposed to happen. Blood pressure is actually supposed to go up during hormonal changes, and then it's supposed to go back down again. I ask people all the time, people are like, oh, I don't have diabetes, and I'll say, well, what's your blood sugar, what's your A1C? And they're like, I don't know. You know, so it's important to know that. It's also important to know that if your A1C, you know, is 5.6, that's not good. You know, people will be like, but it's not diabetic, it's not pre-diabetes, but it's also not optimal because diabetes doesn't happen overnight. It gradually, you know, you'll be living with higher, like, blood sugars in the 90s, and your doctor will be like, oh my God, it's just fine. No, it's not okay. It's beginning stages of diabetes. So you have to keep an eye on your lab work, and some people can be there and they're okay. I do know that if you go out and you have a meal, but at home, you know, you don't allow food to come into your home that harms you. For the most part, as long as you haven't already had type 2 diabetes, you should be good, but everyone's different as well.
Yeah, what type of lab work would you recommend? How often?
Well, it's sometimes difficult getting your doctor to come on board. That's why, because I see Dr. Harrington here. Thankfully, he's licensed in a lot of states because I see patients throughout the world. But for those in the United States, especially Kaiser in California, he has a couple of my Kaiser patients where doctors do not come on board. I even have a patient that I knew had LADA. He ended up diagnosing LADA. The Kaiser doctors were still like, not LADA. So the lab work I like, sometimes it's difficult to do, is an A1C with a fasting insulin level and a C-peptide level. Doing all three of those at the same time tells you how hard your body has to work to keep that A1C where it is and the degree of insulin resistance you may or may not have. Lipids are really important to understand your lipid panel, but those are some of the most important when you're never, of course, doing a vitamin D and B12. Don't be taking supplements and not understanding what your levels are.
You talk about homolysis.
I don't run that test. I know a lot of people who run that insulin sensitivity test. I don't need that test. I do a fasting insulin level. I want a fasting insulin level below 5. If you have high blood pressure, if you have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, you have insulin resistance. You know, so if you're overweight, you have insulin resistance. And so the more factors you have, just a higher degree of insulin. Right.
So I recently read this book called GMO, and it was talking about citric acid being grown in a laboratory from a black mold, in which they add all this processed food. And I couldn't believe it was true. I thought this has to be fake news, but then I see these other YouTube videos saying, no, this is a thing where they're growing this mold and they're adding it to processed food. And we're also talking about canola oil being genetically manipulated, and it's really bad for you. So now I'm thinking, well, maybe I need to be more aware and careful not to eat these things. What is your opinion on this whole GMO, citric acid, black mold connection?
Okay, so I think we should be eating whole foods. We shouldn't be trying to get food out of packages.
So if you see citric acid on the label,
well, your whole food doesn't have a label.
so you're saying not to buy anything that has a label?
I think we should just be very limited on what we're consuming. Yes, these foods that you're talking about adds kindling to the fire. So it's making all the metabolic issues that we're having and all the disease that we're seeing. It's just creating the biggest driver, probably all these ultra-processed foods. So the question has to be like, why are you buying those foods? You know, right? Yep. So like I said, I'm gonna ask you a question too. Would you be willing to take a medication for heart disease?
For Preferably not.
But would you do it?
I don't know.
So this is something I did with all my vegan friends. If you tell me you're willing to die for your food choices, fantastic. Don't take a drug if you end up with a health condition. These drive disease. They just drive disease. So if you're truly vegan for the animals, unless you're like, you know what, I really like this. I don't care if I have cancer or high blood pressure. I'm not going to take a drug to treat that. But the truth is, most of us do. And these foods create disease. And in fact, some studies actually show some vegans, some of the crap food that they're eating, having more disease than people who are omnivores. So, because an omnivore who's eating more fruits and vegetables and an intact brains is going to be healthier than a vegan eating packaged food. Okay, so I'll give you a second.
So my question is, I'm diabetic. My A1C about 5 months ago was 8.0. And then after 3 months, 2 months ago, they checked it and it was 7.8, I think. And now it's 6.7. So in 5 months, I've been down. Good job. Doing what? No, I'm still not. I have been for a while, but I'm trying to watch what I'm eating. I'm trying to not have such large portion sizes.
Okay, so this is going to drive insulin resistance. So I guarantee you that you're probably losing more muscle than you should. And as I showed you earlier, what causes insulin resistance is actually excess dietary fat. So if you are not consuming more carbohydrates, then by default, you are consuming more protein and fat. And so what you do is you will hide the disease while everything else is growing. When you go back to eating carbohydrates, your body will not be able to respond to them the way they should. And so you avoid eating them. Your gut microbes regulate your blood sugars by 4 different pathways, only when they're properly fed. By food restriction, calorie restriction, you drive insulin resistance as well. If it worked what you're doing, we have been doing low carb type of diet since the 60s. We wouldn't have an issue with people being overweight or diabetes. It will make things worse. The best solution is to adopt a healthy lifestyle so that you can still reverse diabetes, learn healthy habits so you stay healthy long term, and optimize your metabolic health as much as possible.
Another question was about like diet sodas instead of regular sodas, drinks that are sugar-free.
So I'm gonna say again, any processed crap is processed crap, and we shouldn't have it in our bodies. Soda, I won't even work with people who are still consuming soda. That has to come out of your body first. Destroys your bone health, it destroys your gut microbiome, and diet drinks are the worst of all of them. From destroying microbes inside of your gut, they interfere with that microbial health. They can increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. And in studies, we know that sodas that are sugar-free cause people to gain weight. So, we need to drink water for our foods. And it comes down to your why. You need to start journaling your why. And your why needs to be something very positive. If your why is something you're running away from, lifestyle change won't stick. It has to be something with a greater purpose beyond yourself, and it has to be something positive. And you need to be putting your why, your goals, and sticky notes, and posting them everywhere, and kind of choosing why you want to make certain decisions. And you need to ask yourself, if you keep doing certain things that you're doing, where will you be in 5 years? Where will you be in 10 years? Well, I think that that's not much points I can get into because everyone living with type 2 diabetes has an emotional eating disorder. Everyone does. And even people who are healthy, food plays a big role in our emotions. That is not my lane. I have people on board all the time that I tell people, and I know, bring Harrington in, and we have some shared clients that I've told also have to have a psychologist on board as well. Most people do, but that's just, that could take up a 3-day lecture on emotional eating.
Playing off of that, let's say someone's gluten-free, they've been fighting food addiction, or let's say anorexia, bulimia, and they're gluten-free, so it's kind of a limited diet, so to speak. And then all these psychiatrists, psychologists that are working, let's say, with this disordered eating are recommending heavy cream and a lot of fat for them to regain just any type of, let's say, muscle mass, or to get their energy levels and their weight to a normal level. What would you recommend for that when you have all these people playing into the high fat, high protein for low carb just to get back into the normal range? What would you recommend in terms of like a vegan diet for that?
Well, I would tell them to stop listening to them, or they either listen to me or they listen to them. It can't be both. I've actually fired people I've worked with before because they get sicker and sicker, and then they're looking to blame it on somebody. To gain weight by any means possible doesn't build muscle. It builds more body fat, and it creates more long-term problems. And of course, my first question is going to be, does that person have celiac disease? Because if they don't have celiac disease, they should not be avoiding gluten-containing products. But of course, then we have to ask, what do you mean by gluten? So if it's a bagel, yes, keep that out of your diet. But if it's barley or kamut or wheat berries, we know not eating wheat grains decreases the diversity of gut microbes in your gut. So we have to start working on healing the gut, with one piece of food at a time. But this person needs someone on board who deals with emotional eating disorders. That is not something that I do. Yeah.
I'm a dietitian, and I would say that they should work with a dietitian that specializes in disordered eating.
Work with a dietitian that works with
Obviously, but a lot of them aren't vegan, so I'm wondering if you know like anyone in that realm.
Well, just because they're not vegan, you can say to your dietitian, I'm going to eat vegan, so you have to help me.
A lot of them say that's disordered eating though.
Well, then you just find a different nutritionist. I mean, same thing with your doctors or your friends. Your friends can tell you the same thing. So it's life is messy, and it's messy for
What about do you think it's not
Sickness, I eat a little bit out when I'm out. I don't consume it at home. It's not the sort of wheat that I want people consuming. I want people consuming barley and farro and kamut and wheat berries. This is where I want people's wheat to come from. Oh, wait. So water recommendations. So you can drink too much water too. You can die from water intoxication. Your urine needs to be clear or pale yellow. I mean, use that as your gauge. Depending on how much fruit you eat and fruits and vegetables, you'll need less water. How hot is it outside? Did you run 7 miles today? We should all be in tune with our body, and the biggest indicators are urine. And our urine should it shouldn't be yellow. It should be almost clear. And that's our indicator.
Can I just add that if you're increasing your protein that you want
So she's saying if you increase your fiber and your protein, you want to increase water to prevent constipation.
omega, omega two?
I don't recommend omegas ever. When you do blood tests, omegas are not in your blood. So you can't actually do a blood test. That's not where they reside. You're probably not going to do a liver biopsy to see your omega levels. Also, when you take omega supplements, you increase your risk of cardiovascular events and stroke and AFib. You literally bypass all the 6 steps to DHA. And it's a supplement. They're dangerous. When you eat tons of leafy greens, you have ALA, it goes through all 6 conversions. It's another very reductionistic way of looking at things. And people in blue zones aren't doing their omegas. They don't have omega deficiencies. We need to stop complicating it. We just need to eat whole packed food, stay away from processed foods and sodas, increase our fiber from real food, and keep the dietary fat. Nuts become a huge problem. People sit down with a bag of nuts. And there's a reason why a walnut shell is so hard. If you had to crack it open yourself, you might get 2 walnuts open and that would be it. You wouldn't be sitting down with a bag of nuts. So, okay.
I have one more question. I have a dear friend that recently came down with shingles, and that person was vegan, and we were really mystified how it could happen, but maybe there was some...
Well, if you have chickenpox, you're at risk for shingles. That's an entirely different thing, but I'm going to tell you what, most vegans I know are not healthy. That's the unfortunate thing. Most vegans I know are not healthy. They're not eating 4 cups of leafy greens a day. They're not eating 3 servings of beans a day. They're looking for something that says plant-based on the package at the grocery store. So, we need to eat whole intact food. And that has to do with having chickenpox earlier. So any of us, and we all get colds and flus and, So, great questions.
So I'm also a vegan crazy lady who's a dietitian and diabetes educator. And I've been practicing for over 35 years. I've been to a lot of conferences. I've heard a lot of dietitians and health professionals speak. And Jacinda is by far one of the best presenters that I She knows how to bring it to the level of anybody. I bet you physicians, you guys enjoyed the presentation. Maybe you picked up something, right? And all of us understood most of the message, right? She brings all of that to the table in such a way to make you feel comfortable, and I can listen to her for hours. But what I'm going to say, she might be on for a few more minutes, but I have to once again mention Lotus Vegan. His mission. Patrick and his staff have made it a mission. There's a jar on the way out. There's a jar of people that need extra tips for the staff. They lovingly prepared this food. If anybody's hungry, it's your fault. There's literally no lie. So don't go hungry. But Patrick, he's shy, humble. Patrick has a vision to educate everybody. He wants to make it available to everybody. And to that end, he started wanting to do these sessions here on Sunday. So he's going to another level. And I'm telling you, there's a few other presenters that I absolutely admire, and one of them that I totally think, and I've known him from years when I first started is Neil Bernard. Anybody not know Neil Bernard? Okay. He is the real deal too. He is a physician, he's a researcher, he presents, he shares for professionals, but for the community. He's coming at the invitation of Patrick, and with the help of Hussein back there, who I managed to get a community, a facility here, a beautiful event facility a mile down the road, M&M, and April. We don't have the flyers yet. And I don't want you to forget the programs that are coming up, so I'll remind you in just a second. But I want you to put on your calendar April 18th, because Neil Bernard will also bring it to the level hungry because he wants to make it affordable for everybody, which means don't worry about what the cost because you probably don't have to worry about it. But the point is, it's going to be something that everybody can come to. He doesn't want to leave anybody out. And neither does Neil Bernard. And Hussein has been in touch with him. And his mantra is the more the better. And he wants to share message. And he's incredible. He's like way up here. And he's a friend and he's a colleague. And I always go to all his seminars, annual international seminars. So I did want to just say that Jacinda is a registered nurse. But a certified diabetes educator, we educate and train in Boston. So she knows a lot more about nutrition than a lot of dietitians actually, because she really understands the current research. And I have to agree with her just about every single little detail. I mean, at the end of the day, there might be like microgravity, you might disagree with that. In the whole scheme of things, really true, the high fiber effect is the deal. And I have to say, Michael Greger also is another one of those people that I absolutely love, and we'll probably try to bring him down here sometime again to do another, huge seminar for people too. But I have to agree with Jacinda about the nuts, because even though we do need a little bit of tiny bit of fat usually in all plants, but selenium is something everybody's concerned about. So Brazil nuts have it. So when I tell people you have to eat a Brazil nut a day, they think, oh, well, I can have a quarter cup, half a cup. Well, it's loaded with fat. I think it was a cup or half a cup is like 19 grams of fat, and of that we have a bunch of saturated fat, 20 grams of saturated fat in a cup. So you can eat one Brazil nut, believe it or not, and you will get all the selenium you need. And like Jacinda was saying is, I remember my aunts and my grandmother putting out some nuts for us with a nutcracker as a snack. And we'd get tired of cracking those nuts. So there's no way to overeat it. But you open up a bag of salty nuts, and you can't stop eating it. Okay? So those things contribute to our overeating. So again, as a fellow diabetes educator and dietitian, I just thank you and I appreciate you so much. And I'm thinking of all the different venues and what you're doing. So remember, put on your calendars April 18th. If you can, please plan to come to our one and only fundraiser and support all the efforts that we do for education too. We have a lot of room. That venue will only hold 120, and you will not be obligated unless you are concerned. So we will have a double times. And please remember, there will be another buffet here with another amazing speaker, Will Tuttle, who is incredible. And he's probably the most peaceful, kindest gentleman you'll ever hear speak and share the message of why we should eat plant-based. He's amazing. So here on the 15th, we have a flyer. If you don't let me know, I got some extra. And it'll be the same type of arrangement. And please make reservations so we can come in. Again, thank you everybody. I'm so happy you're here.